Marshall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Jones, do you consider the fentanyl crisis to be a public health emergency?
Yes, and there is currently a public health emergency declared for the opioid crisis.
Okay, thank you. Like every state, my home state of Kansas is now a border state. That's right. As you can see from this map behind me, Kansas is literally at the crossroads of fentanyl trafficking, with 3 major arteries coming out of Mexico, piercing the heart of our great state, and all 3 bisecting the nation's busiest east-west byway. We are now at ground zero. In fact, just recently, officers in Kansas City, Kansas, seized nearly 15,000 fake pills laced with fentanyl during a 2-day bust. Fentanyl is now killing a Kansan almost every day. It's killing over 250 Americans every day. Sadly, fentanyl is now the #1 killer of young adults. Poisoning deaths, and I mention and I stress, these are poisoning deaths from synthetic opioids, particularly fentanyl, have increased by more than 600%. So where does it come from and why is it so cheap? As we all know, the fentanyl precursors are made in China, and yes, you could call this China's revenge on the West for opium war. In Mexico, Chinese chemists and their cartels convert these precursors into fentanyl, and they lace fake pills like Adderall or Xanax or Percocet, or they mix them with illicit drugs like meth and cocaine, or simply they sell it in various pure forms. Unfortunately, this is one supply chain from China that's not broken. It goes without saying, with an open, porous southern border, the supply is abundant, driving the street price down. For where oxycodone tablets maybe cost $60, you can pay $2 to $6 for a fentanyl tablet. One final point I want to go back to, returning to this fake pills concept. Dying from fentanyl is poisoning. It's not an overdose. That's poisoning. If a non-suspecting student takes a fake Adderall pill they purchased online or wherever they purchased and dies, that's poisoning, and the criminals should be tried for murder. At least that's how I see it. Mr. Chester, would securing borders and decreasing smuggling impact the fentanyl crisis?
Yes, Senator. I mean, as I said in response to Senator Murphy as well, the men and women that we have at our southern border are the finest.
We understand, but you agree it would have a significant impact. Dr. Jones, same question. Would securing our borders and decreasing the smuggling, the easy access to fentanyl, impact the crisis?
I would reiterate Mr. Chester's points about the efforts in the National Drug Control Strategy to address.
But they're not working. You can reiterate the points, but obviously with a 600% increase in deaths, whatever we're trying to do, reiterating the points, forming committees, talking to people, something's not working. Dr. Jones, do you believe we should apply Title IV to drug smuggling across the southern border?
Well, Title 42 is rooted in protecting public health from communicable diseases. So while there is a declared 319 public health emergency for the opioid crisis, it falls outside of the scope of Title 42.
Okay. Mr. Chester, you stated that first, the most important action we can do right now is to give more naloxone out. You know, as a physician, that's like telling me to give people with brain tumors Tylenol, to say that that's the most important thing. Do you really feel that giving out naloxone would have a bigger impact than securing our borders?
Senator, by most important thing, what I meant was most important thing in saving lives now, because it can reduce an opioid overdose. But that is not exclusive of all the work that's being done at the southern border and with other countries and with the Postal Inspection Service and all of the other means that we do to keep the drugs out of our communities. The naloxone is designed to reduce an overdose death and save a life immediately.
You know, what we're doing now is we're putting a finger in the dike, and the entire dike is giving away. If we don't secure our borders, this epidemic is only going to get worse. Mr. Chester, you also stated that the U.S. routinely engages with the People's Republic of China to address shipments, and you go on to say that PRC's actions in that regard have a direct and positive impact. How can you objectively, quantitatively substantiate your statement when we're seeing a 600% increase in deaths? I know you're talking to them. I know there's collaboration, but what's your objective evidence that says that China is doing anything to slow this machine down?
The best example I can give you is the work that we did with China prior to May of 2019, when China class scheduled all fentanyl-related substances, and as a result, the direct shipment of fentanyl and fentanyl-related substances from China to the United States went down to almost zero. Now,
And that was in 2019?
that was in 2019, yes, sir. Now, the traffickers moved from producing finished fentanyl into precursor chemicals, which they supplied to Mexican suppliers, and that went up. But that speaks to the dynamic and interactive nature of very determined, profit-driven
So
drug trafficking.
quantitatively, what have you done that can show me that we've impacted that? What is there any objective evidence that we've impacted China's supplying this? I mean, they're sending it to us like we send wheat to them.
The number of seizures of precursor chemicals and pre-precursor chemicals in the Western Hemisphere has been consistently high, and in many of those cases, that was due to cooperation with Chinese officials, or subsequent to the seizure, the information was sent to the Chinese officials so that they could take action and hold the individuals responsible.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back. But the point is, the seizures are going up because objectively, China is not stopping the supply of these precursors. Thank you. I yield back.